Hello there ladies, gentlemen and all variations thereupon. Today I'm going to be using up some of my scrap fabric with a little project where I create some bibs for my new niece. The first step in creating this project is to embroider on the patterns that I want on the actual bibs themselves. But this is an optional step. You don't have to embroider on a pattern if you just want to use the fabric itself, or if you have a fabric that has an interesting pattern that you want to use anyway, then you don't need to do this part. I'm not going to give too much of an in-depth, detailed overview on how to do this, because at the top of the screen now you'll see a card which will show a series of videos I've created which shows you all the basic stitches for embroidery. Basically, embroidery is fairly simple. All you're doing is, instead of drawing the picture like with a pencil where you make a line, you're using a coloured thread to make that line and fill in areas of your thread drawing in order to create an image. Right now I'm just doing the image of a football logo, and with that done, now we can move on to actually making the bibs. Okay, so what we have here is slightly more of a traditional design for a little girl. Is that I've got an elephant that's been embroidered on, and as you can see, I've pinned together the pieces of fabric that I'm going to cut the bib from. There's two pieces here, one that's got the embroidery on and a back layer. Now, you may wish to put a layer of felt in between just to bulk it out a bit and make it a bit more substantial, but I'm just using my scrap fabric and I don't have any scrap felt. So what I'm going to do instead is just pin these together and then cut it all out as one piece. We're following the pins that are all holding it in place, and then we'll just have the outline of a bib. And there we go, there's the outline of the bib in two pieces of material. Now, because we're going to sew these together, we're going to need to turn it around so that the design is on the inside of the fabric. And if I were to create this out of a piece of material that I had specifically for it, I would have left more seam allowance around the outside, so I can quickly just machine stitch around. Because this is scrap fabric and I have to work within the confines of the size of the fabric I've got, I haven't got much seam allowance. So what I'm going to do in order to sew these together is I'm going to sew them by hand, and I'm going to create the fold in the seam by just rolling these up and allowing the raw edge to sit on the inside. So I have a very small area that's actually contained within the seam, and I'm just going to sew that bit up so that the raw edge is on the inside and we won't get as much fraying. What I am going to leave open is this bottom area here where it's widest, and then through that we're going to turn it inside out. So let's go do that now. Because the seam allowance is so small, I'm not able to use a running stitch or anything like that. In order to make sure that I trap the raw edge on the inside, then I need to push the pin all the way through in one direction and then pull the thread through, then reverse the pin and go through the opposite direction and pull all the thread through. It's the only way to make sure it all stays secure. Once you've sewn all the way around, we just the bottom open and we can do the turn. And what you'll notice is the straps that go around the neck are going to be very difficult to get through, so you're going to want something long to poke it through. Okay, so now that they're turned as far as they will go inside out, you can see how thin these are now that the seam allowance has been taken out. So in order to enclose this last area, what we're going to do is a invisible stitch. Now, obviously I could just turn these two pieces inside so that the raw edge is on the inside, and then just pass the needle through, wrapping around and doing a stitch like that. Entirely possible to do that, but you'll see the stitch all the way along. The way to get around this is to fold the seam over, pass the needle so that it pokes out from the inside through that fold. You need a knot in the end, and then you pass it in a fold on the other side, right at the tip of that fold on this side. So if you fold it over, pass it in right through the tip of that fold. and then when you pull the thread tight, it'll pull these two sides together and hide the thread in between, so you'll never see it. Do that all the way along and you'll end up with a invisible thread. Once all the outside edges are sewn up, we attach a button onto one of the arms, ready for the closure. Now you may be thinking, Bridget, that's a very small neck hole for a baby, and you're not really going to get a buttonhole through there, are you? Which is why I'm going to take out some embroidery thread, tie a knot in the end, sneak it through the side seam here. Then after it's gone through, I'm going to pass it back through itself so that we get a loop. I'm going to pass the needle back through it in order to stop it being a slip knot. So I'm going through the thread, we've got thread either side, and back through this one. So now, no matter how much you pull, that loop is going to stay there, and then I'm going to pass the needle back through, adjust it to the size that I want, right there, and same again, pass it back through itself and the bib as well this time, and tie it off. So to recap, we've got a knot this side, passed through itself twice, so it's tied into a knot there so it can't slip past itself, and then we've tied another knot down that side, so we've got a little loop, and then that loop will go around the button and you've got the bib. And then we have an embroidered baby bib for a newborn. Now this, as I just said, is for a newborn. It's a very small one, so it's for baby when they spit up milk. But you can alter it and change the size. If you do a very small newborn one and you do this string method for tightening, you can extend the life of it by simply extending the embroidery thread there, make it longer, and it can stretch around a wider and wider neck until baby outgrows the length of it. Now the primary advantage of making things homemade is that you can customise them. So this one would be for a little animal lover. But suppose baby isn't an animal lover, and maybe they're a sports star, then you can put a little sports logo on there. Or maybe they're the future emperor of the Imperium of Man, then, you know, put the eagle with their initials. Or maybe there's some sort of eldritch horror which lurks across the ethereal sea, just consuming all flesh that comes in contact with it, leaving behind nothing more than a screaming soul lost in the vastness of the void. However your baby chooses to identify, you can easily make a bib for them and change it up as you see fit. It only takes an afternoon to make, and it uses up your scrap material. Can't say better than that. So with that, I'll see you in the next video.